What's up, guys, gals, non-binary pals? Welcome to the Liberty Revolt. We're so stoked to be with you again. My name is Bucky Dillon, one of the co-founders. The Liberty Revolt is founded on strategies to engage in the culture war and to hopefully develop a better understanding of history, political philosophy, and policies more broadly. Today, we're going to be joined by Olivia Murray, who wrote the book, Abortion versus Slavery, the Parallels Between Two National Sins. So let's get deep into a conversation that has got Americans and libertarians alike deeply divided. I hope you guys enjoy the show. And we're live. Kevin, abortion. On a scale from 10 being the greatest thing ever, 1 being January 6th, where does it lie?
Well, love, you got to turn it all the way up to 11 here. All right, it's absolutely mind blowing. No, you know how I feel about abortion, and you know how revolting I find most of the arguments made for it are. So I'm actually excited to finally have this conversation. You duck out on it all the time.
Bucky.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Olivia, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So the first thing the audience is going to want to know, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a mom. I'm based in Tucson, Arizona, and I run a nonprofit here, and it is focused on abortion education using an apologetics approach. So a lot of the, it's appealing to a secular world. I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. Not everyone is, so I can't obviously argue that abortion is wrong from a biblical standpoint. And that was the reason for writing this book. I wanted to obviously appeal to people who are just, hopefully using logic and reason, not a lot of leftists, but the majority, hopefully a majority.
No one is at this point. No. As soon as you throw any amount of logic or reason at them, they're like, nah, I'm not going to take that. I like my beliefs. They're very nice.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is like, this used to be a conversation that was pretty understood, right? The safe, legal, and rare argument. That used to be what it is. Look, they're going to do it anyway, so let's at least try to make it safe kind of deal. And It's developed into what it is today. How do you feel that transition has gone?
Predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think anytime you give an inch to the evil, they take it around with it. It's just, it's just a nosedive, and it's just faster and faster. When you put those coins in at Walmart or used to at McDonald's, and as they get, they get faster and faster, they hit the bottom. Yep. And it's the same with so many, kind of Marxist agendas, or, the same thing we've seen with COVID this whole time. It's just 2 weeks. Oh, wait, it's just a mask. Oh, wait, it's just a shot. Oh, wait, it's just 2 shots. It's just a booster. And it's just worldwide communism to stop the flu. So you give it, you just give an inch, and they take, 50 miles, 100 miles. And just like you said, it was supposed to be safe, legal, and rare, and now it's just free for all, slit in their throats as they're coming down the birth canal. It's sick.
Yeah, no, it's become, not only has it become just absolutely abominable in the extent people will allow it to occur, but the rationalizations given in order to justify it have just become mind-boggling to me, because back in the day, no one denied that was a baby. In fact, it had the very explicit understanding, hey, this is a human. We're trying to figure out at what point the government's allowed to say, hey, we know there's a human inside of you. We need to protect it. That was Roe v. Wade. Like, at what point can the government find out you have a child in you? And it's like, now they, as your book describes, they use such dehumanizing. And when I say dehumanizing, I don't just mean they're saying terrible things about people, but literally trying to explain why something human is no longer actually human. And it's just how this transition has occurred to where these arguments are now the ones being made, I'm at a loss for like how people just began to just accept it.
It is bizarre. It really is. Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it.
But I mean, as far as what you hear though, as far as like when you're having this discussion, what are the most common tactics that you run up against, even outside of the ones laid out in your book? Like, what do you notice the most when either from the people making the argument or what kind of attitude they're taking while making it?
I think especially I see a really hardened heart. I see they're very hardened to the truth, and they're willful. And I this kind of like merges into, I do sidewalk counseling as well.
Yeah.
Now, this is not the mission of the nonprofit. I just, but obviously, of course, the real life examples are women walking into abortion clinics. So you sometimes see them, and I mean, praise God that the group in Tucson that I work with, they are such gentle people. It's none of the, kind of typical ones that give us all a bad name, screaming, you murderer. I mean, terrible things that aren't going to help. It's a very gentle, gracious crowd. And even just say, hey, may we pray for you? May we talk to you? And they're just screaming obscenities. Like that's a very hardened heart as they're walking into the abortion mill.
Yeah.
And I also see what I liken it to is like trying to pin down a drop of water. You kind of corner somebody on one issue and they squeeze out and they're, oh, well, what about rape? Oh, okay, well, hold on. Let's address this first and then let's move on to that. But it's just all these logical fallacies they throw at you. And to me, it's so indicative, like you said, the logic. I think this all the time, and it's still mind-boggling. People do not think. They do not think. I don't know if it's just by design with Common Core, by an attack on schools. I'm not sure what it is. People are incapable of thinking, and
I think so. I've been listening to Jonathan Haidt's Righteous Mind again because it's one of my favorite books of all time. And have you ever read it by any chance?
No, I don't have a pen and paper. I got to write this down. So maybe text me after.
So The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt is a fantastic sociologist. He's an incredibly brilliant man. He's currently over at the university. I think he's at the University of Virginia or he's at NYU. But what he did in The Righteous Mind is he sought out what is it that guides people's logic and reasoning? Why can't people overcome emotion? And what he ended up finding, at least one of the things he found, is that the relationship between your emotion and your reasoning is that of an elephant and a rider. The elephant being your emotions, the rider being obviously your logic. Now,
right.
Immediately when some people hear things such as the abortion discussion, the elephant starts heading off in one direction, the direction that they emotionally want it to be, right? They want to feel, they might not like it, but they want abortion to be a thing. And we'll get into the reasons why people want abortion to be a thing. But what happens is the elephant starts heading off in one direction. Now, we as the rider can only control it so much as we have actually trained it. Now,
Right.
People are thinking, but their ability to control the elephant as it's going, unless they really practice it, unless they really accept that, hey, I'm getting overrun by the elephant constantly, I need to actually train myself to think about it. They're never actually going to be able to steer it very well, no matter, us shouting good arguments from the side. If the rider's too focused on just trying to get control of the elephant, it's never going to land. It's never going to hear anything.
Right. That's a really good analogy.
It is. I love this book. Like I said, I'm listening to it for, I think, my third time through because it really offers a lot of insights. And so what I'm getting with this is I don't know necessarily if it's that people don't think, but it's that people don't practice thinking. They don't actually take the time to figure things out as they go. And so you end up with people saying, yeah, that's not a human life. And they're literally talking about the essence of humanity.
Right. Absolutely. That's interesting you bring that up because so I'm 32.
Mhm.
And when I really got into this pro-life stuff and understanding, I didn't know what abortion was until I'm 25 years old. And so to me, that, like you're saying, people don't practice thinking. If someone had said, hey, Liv, is a baby at 9 months? Oh, yeah, of course. Well, what about 8 months? Well, yeah, okay. Well, what about 7? Well, I guess, and obviously you can work that way back all the way till conception, unless when the new life, that's when somebody new comes into existence. And I had never even worked through a simple thought like that until 25 years old. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's usually about the time people are able to start thinking for themselves.
I wasn't thinking.
Hey, Buck, are you going to introduce the fourth man that just joined?
Who is the fourth man that just joined?
I am Cole Masters. Hello, nice to see you guys. Nice to be here again. Hello, Olivia. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, Cole.
Bucky has told me a lot about you, and I'm just checking out the chapters of your book. I'm very interested in what's going on here today. So thanks for bringing me on, guys. And yeah, let's get this going.
He says today, by the way, because he's in China. So hopefully he also doesn't get kidnapped and arrested halfway through the.
You're not in China.
I am in China. Yes, I am in Shanghai right now.
Oh my gosh, when are you coming home?
Soul.
Oh, geez. Probably
not for a while,
to tell you the truth. I'm here to ride out the craziness.
Oh, my gosh. I'm going to let my dog out because he's whining. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Bucky, you were trying to say something earlier, though, too, before I cut you off.
Yeah, I wanted to. So, Olivia, I'm going to place a huge burden on your shoulders.
Okay.
Okay. So, as Kevin alluded to earlier, I have avoided conversations about abortion.
Okay.
I am personally pro-life. I think scientifically the pro-life argument is the correct one. When Ben Shapiro says things like, if we found a human embryo on Mars, the scientific papers would correctly read human life found on Mars. And I think that is fundamentally what the conversation boils down to. Is it a life or is it not a life? If it's a life, you can't kill it. If it's not a life, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
And I think that's what the conversation is really boils down to. But I have been hesitant to really make that a hill that I would die on. In some ways, I feel like perhaps that issue is downstream of other cultural issues that we should address first. Sometimes I just feel like I don't really have a firm stance on it because, frankly, if you are morally deficient enough to think it's okay to murder your own child, perhaps you should not be reproducing. So here's the burden. Convince me that I should be more than personally pro-life, that I should be publicly advocating for pro-life positions.
I think maybe, have you ever watched an abortion?
You know, I saw some of Dr. Levine's videos where he goes through the process
Right.
and very
With the cartoon, right?
explains how you are.
That's not the same, bro.
Child. It is absolutely horrifying. And when I say publicly pro-life, I don't even know if that's true. I've actually never voted on a pro-life issue or not, but I think if somebody were to put a ballot in front of me with the ballot options, abortion versus pro-choice, whatever.
I think that was on our last ballot.
Pro-life. You know, I don't think I voted on that last ballot. I think I would vote pro-life because I don't think I could stomach voting otherwise, but it's not an issue that I talk about much. It's not an issue that I write about much. It's not an issue that I'm very publicly advocating for.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, definitely, I know God has equipped people with all different passions. And now I would hope, and I would love if everyone was pro-life. That doesn't mean that's everyone's, because we still need people fighting for election, integrity. We still need people fighting for a Christian, Judeo-Christian culture. I mean, there's so many things that we need, and the Fed, all these things that really are super evil. And I know that's not everyone's passion. However, if you're saying you couldn't stomach otherwise, I think maybe because it's not personal enough. I don't know if maybe you've not been, I don't want to obviously assume anything about your background. But I would encourage you to watch a real abortion and see what happens on video. Like, you can see pictures and they're very devastating, but to watch a child move away as it's being dismembered, and these really horrible graphic things might make it a little more real. And it's like, this is totally done on purpose. They shelter the public from the brutality of it because they don't want you to
hide it between semantic games. Like instead of killing a child, it's the woman's choice.
Right. And they really hide that, like, barbarism. I mean, there's so much like blood. Like, I mean, women have testified, like, waking up and they see the bits of their child floating in the little canister after a vacuum aspiration, their little face. I mean, all these horrible horrible things. And I just think that, to me, life is a paramount issue, because if you're not alive, what else matters? Like, okay, yeah, I want low taxes. I want no taxes, no income tax. But what difference does that make if, an infant's getting their throat slit, before they're ripped apart? I think when you look and see that barbarism, it should be, it doesn't mean you go, screaming from the mountaintops every day, yelling about pro-life stuff. I understand that God has not called everybody, and that's by his choice. He's calling you obviously to something else. But I would definitely encourage you, maybe watch a video, and for me, check pro-life,
Yeah.
please.
I remember seeing the beginning of Unplanned, and it was actually the second time I had seen an abortion video, because like I'm a naturally incredibly inquisitive human being. I try to be as philosophical about things as I possibly can. And so I had tried, when I made my switch from being very openly pro-choice to being pro-life, it was after watching a video, right? And the first one I saw, I watched it for 13 seconds and could not watch the rest, and realized that, hey, if this is so disgusting in the first 13 seconds, I don't have to watch the rest to know that this is truly an evil I need to stand against and take a stand against. And to you, Bucky, what I say is, you have to understand, you argue it from the perspective of, and this is my perspective of, what is the goal of being pro-life? It's to reduce the amount of abortions as much as possible. Now, I take the stance of, I'm never going to argue that abortion should be made illegal, because if you have to make it illegal, or the legality of what's in question, then that means that you have failed as a community, as a society, to build up a community where women don't feel they need abortions, where women don't feel that they need to go kill their child to save their social life, their mental health, what have you. We need to create a society where, a girl getting pregnant at 15, she doesn't have to worry about if her parents are literally going to boot her from her house. And if that happens, she's going to be completely alone in her community. Because even if her parents get rid of her, potentially, she's going to be taken in by her neighbors, by her community. That's the goal, should be getting as few abortions as possible. And that is achieved by creating an environment where women don't seek abortions, where women don't feel they need to have an abortion outside of incredibly rare cases.
See, I'm on this stance. I've always been a little wishy-washy, but digging into this a lot, it really opens up like a whole societal can of worms. And even when you look at, I guess the question I have is, what should we think about doing with all the kids, who are right now in the foster care system already? And like, even, I don't know if you guys have seen, but I've been looking into the troubled teen industry, where they like they kidnap these teenagers in the middle of the night and give them a lice bath and throw them for 3 years in an institution in the middle of Maine in the woods, and like do these terrible things. And it makes me wonder what we could do all the way up the chain, from conception to birth to, abandonment, if that happens to be the case. Because I think this would be the argument from the other side. And I would like to get this addressed, because I feel like no one ever argues with each other about this, because everyone's so contentious all the time. So,
Right.
You have one side speaking to their base and the other side speaking to their base, and really no crossover. So Olivia, I'd like to ask you then, what would you say to those people who say, we need to look at the kids in the foster care system right now and say, oh, we don't want to bolster this?
Right. So, and also there was something that Bucky said I wanted to go back to, but I'll do my best to answer that question. So I'm very like logical minded. So in my professional life, I'm an editor-in-chief for a new magazine and also an online social media platform. So I am very black and white, just kind of the way I think. And to me, I think like, well, it's an easy, it's difficult, because there's obviously a huge part of being anti-abortion for me is because I care. Like it's a compassion. I don't want babies hurt. I don't want mothers looking back and feeling that pain of like losing their child. So there is compassion. But I think it's wrong. Abortion's wrong. Everything else is irrelevant. How does amount of kids in the foster care system, how is that relevant to this child deserving life or deserving a death sentence? Mm-hmm. And so, because I do hear, you do hear that, an overburdened foster care system. All right, well, it needs an overhaul. But this goes back to then what Bucky said. This is just like a trickle down or downstream of other issues. And I agree with that. I agree. There's at the foundation, there's an attack on nuclear families, abandonment, fathers not being there, single mothers, like, I can't handle kids, all these kinds of things. So I think at the root of it, it's, to me, being a believer, it's a satanic attack on, God designed mothers and fathers and family units, and the nuclear families make, a nuclear family is the foundation of a very strong society. And so I agree with Bucky, definitely, that all these issues are trickle down of a bigger issue. But I also, back to the foster care, these kids, who have been abused or have come out of these terrible situations, and we look at that and we don't kill them now. So why should we kill them earlier? They've been through hell. These children who maybe have been abused, sexually abused, raped, any number of horrible, heinous things, and their life, they still deserve life. And, for so many of them, I understand, obviously there's trauma, but for so many of them who have come through that, they're happy they're alive. They're glad they're here, even though they've dealt with horrible things. Maybe they have been. I knew a girl, and she adopted 2 little girls, and one had just been as a 3-month-old brutally beaten by her dad. Just her bones were smashed. She had, it was just terrible abuse. And she's now, by the grace of God, in a loving family. And she has been through hell. So I think it's indicative that we don't kill foster children now who have gone through trauma. And you obviously, I'm assuming you want to protect them from being brought into a world where they're, abused or whatever. And so there's no excuse to kill them in the womb.
Yeah. And the question is, who decides that, somebody's life doesn't have the quality that meets my standard, therefore they shouldn't be granted life. Only God can make that decision, right?
Well, the way I put it is, if your justification for ending the life is the potential suffering from having the child, using potential suffering as a justification for ending life means we all get killed. There is literally no way to avoid any of that. You want to talk about the foster care system? One of the big problems in the foster care system is sexual abuse. I got molested by a family member, not in my immediate family, when I was 5 years old, right? So it's like, I had a strong family. Does that mean now I should have been aborted because I got sexually abused at some point in my childhood? No, it doesn't, because at the end of the day, what life is about is learning how to overcome obstacles that are put before you, learning how to overcome the suffering that is inherent with what happens, so that in those moments between the great suffering that we all experience, you can truly appreciate the happiness and the joy that makes, as I always say, the happiness and joy that makes life truly worth living, because the suffering is always going to be there, but the happiness and joy is based on you. Being able to appreciate the wonderfulness of life itself, that comes down to the individual. And I truly believe every individual is capable of overcoming those obstacles. But if you immediately are telling them there's no way they can, or that they would be better off dead, do you think anyone's ever going to be able to overcome those obstacles?
And another question, that I feel like we need to address is, if we decide that someone's quality of life, or if downstream issues, because I mentioned earlier that is abortion a downstream issue, and then that kind of lends itself to the question of, if abortion was made illegal, would people behave differently? Would people be more responsible with their sexual behavior? Because that's what I kind of alluded to earlier when I said, is abortion downstream of culture, in the sense that we have a culture that does not take sexual activity seriously, does not act responsibly, glorifies sexual irresponsibility. Would making abortion illegal foster a culture of responsibility? And does making abortion totally legal, celebrate your abortion, shout your abortion, make it so that culture of irresponsibility becomes stronger? What do you think?
Cole or me?
Olivia.
Well, I think
hear so much from Cole. I don't want to hear another word from Cole.
I just prefer having meeting Cole.
I hope Cole gets disappeared in China.
I don't. What?
I'm right here, man. Basically.
Yeah. Yeah, organs harvested. Um,
Okay.
yeah. No, I think that,
Still better
I
than
mean,
abortion.
we saw with Texas the other day. So I actually think that wasn't a very good bill. Um, Mainly for the, obviously the Texas heartbeat bill. There was so much, anger, of course, that came out of this, and Lyft and Uber and I don't know who else, Cold Stone maybe, who knows, is all getting in
Coca-Cola,
on.
for sure.
Okay, is all getting in on supporting, killing babies. But I think it's a bad bill because the same man that's about to make cash from murdering the baby is the one responsible for finding the heartbeat. He
Yeah.
can say he didn't find a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's easy. However, the girls apparently they couldn't figure that out, because after that there was a massive influx in calls to the pregnancy resource centers in the area. So now those women are already pregnant. So they've already made the bad choices, irresponsible, sexually irresponsible sexual choices. But I think that I do think it would foster a change in culture. And what I see, we live in a very kind of demonic culture. I don't know if you guys saw the protest of the Satanists outside, and maybe it was Pennsylvania the other day. It was just sick. It was nuts. So to me, like, very demonic. And despite all that, shout your abortion, these demonic portrayals, satanic ritual worship, I don't know, abortion stuff. The culture, the polls are showing Americans are still becoming more pro-life. So I think it is discouraging, because I can see that and I'm like, oh man, I'm never going to win this battle. But maybe people in Texas thought that. And, maybe people, I think it's North Dakota or South Dakota, they don't even have an abortion clinic in the state. What a blessing, what a gift. So I think that even in this seemingly disadvantaged culture for the pro-lifers, I think it's I don't think it's real. I think it's a charade, or I don't know what the word is. But I think people are still becoming more pro-life, because I think the science is showing more and more, making it more and more obvious. You cannot kill a baby, and that's what it is.
I think I actually kind of also, I agree to an extent, but I also think that part of the reason why people are becoming more pro-life is just how insane the arguments from the pro-choice crowd have become, right? Because
that's
a lot
true.
of people that say they're pro-choice are thinking pro-choice back in the day of safe, legal, and rare, not pro-choice in the day of shout your abortion. And I think especially what the people on the left are really doing to disservice themselves in these debates is making, as we discussed earlier, completely illogical arguments, right? So if you're on the fence about this stuff, and you have a pro-lifer on one side saying, hey, they're trying to make it legal to abort in the third trimester, which, oh, by the way, here in Colorado is legal.
I know.
And then you have a pro-choicer over there going, well, it's not a life. It's like, that moderate in the middle is gonna just sit there and be like, yeah, it is. It is. Like, I'm sorry, I understand that there might be a reason why someone might need to get an abortion, but you can't tell me a human is not a human, right? I don't care if it's in the zygomatic stage or the fetal stage or whatever. It's like, it's a human, and the whole point of abortion was so that they were going to happen anyway. So let's at least make it safe. But nowadays, when you hear their arguments, it's just so.
That's a good point. You're right.
They're not even good. The thing is, there are better arguments out there, and we went over this. For example, I took philosophy classes in college, and we dealt with abortion as an issue, and there are some good philosophical arguments for and against, but you don't hear those from the left. You know what you hear? My body, my choice, which is like the most idiomatically
if it was
obvious
your body,
thing, because if
you
you're
would
saying,
be the one dismembered in a trash can.
Like, is the body that you're going to take out yours? Like that? That's what it is. It's very simple. That there are two bodies now. Right?
Let's break it down. Let's break that
very
argument down really quick. They say
stupid argument.
They say,
Kevin, please.
My body, my choice. What is the insinuation there? That whatever is growing inside you is a part of your body. Well, okay, let's throw some science at it. If you withdrew the DNA from the separate or the other entity that you're claiming is an entity in there, would it match up with the mother or not? No, it wouldn't. Therefore, it is not the same as the mother. It's not the same DNA. It's not the same person. Then you enter the argument where they're like, well, it's parasitic. Well, sorry, you can't read a dictionary. The definition of parasite, as you mentioned in your book as well, requires a different species. It cannot be of the same. Otherwise, it's called symbiotic. You can't. The argument, just my body, my choice, breaks down immediately upon inspection because, like, it requires the denial of the entire pro-life stance, which is actually the one that's rooted in logic and reason and science. In that, we are arguing that's a baby. Their initial my body, my choice denies that on its whole in its entirety immediately, and that's why I think it's starting to really fail as an argument.
And another argument they make all the time is that it's not viable outside the mother, so it doesn't count as a life.
Ooh, that's my favorite.
It's a separate entity, it doesn't count as a life because it's not viable outside the mother.
That is
well, as a father, let me tell you something. My 3-year-old is not viable outside of constant supervision from an adult.
Look,
if you left my 3-year-old alone in a room for 3 days, it's over.
Look, I'm on a college campus. I don't even think half the kids I go to school with are viable at this point. Like,
true.
Like, I had my roommate say that. I go, do you think that you can just take a baby out of the womb and leave it on a table? What point do you think that is? And he goes, I don't know. I'm like, dude, do you think you could have survived on your own at 10? Because I know you, and you would die very quickly in this world. Like, don't go thinking that just because your parents pay all your bills, pay your rent, pay for your food, pay for all of this, you are also somehow less reliant on them than a baby is. Because as far as I can tell, you're a 25-year-old baby, or at this point, a 21-year-old baby.
And we have a bunch of human beings alive right now that need constant assistance to be viable.
My mother.
From other people.
Well, she's not.
The government, welfare people.
It's like my mother, right?
We abort them.
My mother would not have survived. It's like, it goes back to they're going to be poor. So she got an abortion because she's poor. I was like, oh, well, I'm glad you agree with my cure for homelessness. What is that?
Let's talk about the border.
Yeah, like, it's like, if being poor is a justification for killing a baby, why can't it be justification for killing a crazy man and shit on the sidewalk?
Really have to go. There's another argument, and it's, is genetic humanity sufficient for the provisioning of resources beyond what that person can procure for themselves, maybe over the course of their entire life? So you look at something like a person who's a person, but is born without half their brain, like the frontal lobe and the complex thinking part. And this actually happened, right? This girl basically just has a brain stem. She needs the resources of the state and constant provision to stay alive. Well, why not just pull the plug? And it's because we say she's a member of genetic humanity. So I think you have to accept this is the best argument, I would say, against, but also like the most Hitler-esque kind of Stasi argument of like, well, the mentally ill, we can just kind of...
Yeah, they won't know. They can't
concern.
Babies we can't deal with. We can just kind of get rid of them. It's a very eugenicist sort of murderous utopia argument. And
can you get there from an atheist argument that a human life is inherently valuable?
Yes.
See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Once you're atheistic, once you have an atheist point of view, then you're looking at morals. Then it becomes a moral question. It becomes a
but atheism requires morality. Atheism is the acceptance that morality can be found from a place outside of the religious and the denial of God.
Man.
No, that's an inherent. You cannot be atheist and not have some moral foundation from somewhere. You have to have your moral foundation. And if logic is your moral foundation, well, logically, I, as the atheist, will not attack someone in cold blood, right? Unless I think it's a universality, right? Unless I think it is okay for a person to just attack another person in cold blood.
I'm gonna disagree with you.
If the case is made that the only time violence is acceptable is in return for violence or threat, then you can only take the life of another human if they are threatening your life. That's the only time.
Very libertarian, but I look at human history, and scientifically speaking, humanity has advanced itself. Tribes have advanced themselves many, many times by killing the neighbor.
So it was okay that it happened.
I'm not saying it's okay that it happened.
That's the point.
Science
that's the point.
Necessarily have a moral code.
No, that's
I agree with you on that, Dylan. I think
it's not okay. Why is it not okay?
Because they were attacking someone. I'm saying scientifically speaking, science doesn't follow.
So it's a good thing. So it's a good thing when violence is used.
No one's saying it's a good thing. But look at this. John Wayne Gacy was logical because he murdered the prostitutes instead of paying them because for him, one, he thought he could get away with it. 2,
If
he
we're
thought,
going to use
"Oh, I get to
outliers of
save
human
money."
nature, it's
3,
not going to
I don't
matter.
have to deal with these things. There's nothing illogical about that. It's our
If you're gonna
I would
use-
say
if
slaughter
you're
of
gonna
thy
use-
neighbor is not a human outlier.
It's our emotional brains which give credence to moral ideas, right?
Even
the emotional
in
brain
that
is going to-
case, even in that case, the people doing the attacking are almost always justifying it through some ulterior motive. And if we're going to talk atheism, none of those people you're talking about were atheist. Atheism
Well-
did not become a thing until about the 17, 1800s.
All right, let's forget atheism.
So-
Let's say scientifically speaking.
Why? No, you have to understand why atheism is a thing. Why atheists
scientifically
do
speaking,
this.
Disconnecting abortion from the morality. How can you make a case that a human life is valuable?
The only way human life
logically.
continues is with reproduction. Scientifically speaking, the point of life is to reproduce.
Yeah, that's what I've thought of before. Is like their whole evolution argument is just this kind of like, you know, life is not inherently value. It's just you're just an animal. You know, animals reproduce. That kind of goes against that flies. You know, abortion, killing your own offspring, killing your own progeny, your own legacy. That flies in the face of the atheist evolution argument.
Well, I mean,
why would you do that?
If that entity is taking away the resources from otherwise productive people, like say you have a tribe of 3 people and one person is a vegetable and 2 people are trying to survive the storm and the atrocities of primitive life, how do you make the case that every human life is valuable?
Yeah, I don't know how you do it with an atheist. Yeah.
In that case, it would just be said that, hey, look, is that a man or a woman? If we're going to get really bad about it, right? Like, you know, if it's 2 men and a vegetable woman and she still has the capability to reproduce and that's all they have left ever, at that point, morals taken out of the equation, you know what I'm about to say, right? That is morals taken out of the equation. That's what it would come down to. If one of them provides a value in the reproductive cycle, despite the fact that they are brain dead.
You only need so many dudes.
Women are the most valuable thing on this planet. Women are
human lives are all valuable, but some lives just ain't quite as valuable as others. Olivia,
there's a reason we do the most dangerous jobs and go to war.
I never said all human lives were equally of value. All men, their value is to sacrifice to allow women and children to live. Because women and children are more valuable.
I'm glad we had this live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, is it okay to board your boys? Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
No,
that's not what I said. I said men.
Let's get into your book, Abortion versus Slavery, the Parallels Between Two National Sins. Olivia, chapter 1, dehumanize the condemned population as not a person.
Right.
Can you speak on that?
Yeah, so the example I use, obviously, in the slavery is what, you know, obviously how they treated them. They were cattle. They had breeding programs. Like those are very, you know, you sell them on the auction block like you do at a livestock, you know, event. And obviously then, of course, the Dred Scott, what it came down to was he's not a person, he's property. So that was, you know, kind of put the nail in the coffin, at least for, you know, freedom for our Black, you know, Americans at that point. And you see the exact same thing in the abortion argument, like you just said. It's a zygote, it's a clump of cells, it's not a person. And of course, on the left, you know, person is it's all arbitrary for them. Some says it's 9 months, some says it's just an arbitrary timeline. And just depending who you're talking to, it's different. So what it comes down to is they both say not a person. And then in the Roe v. Wade, 1973, that also came down to, you know, not a person. And Blackmun, the Chief Justice at the time, he said, if, you know, those who are better acquainted with this kind of stuff, philosophers, doctors, scientists, when they figure out when life begins, then we got to come back to this. Because the unborn child is specifically protected by the 14th Amendment. So he obviously opened it up to be investigated down the road. And as we can obviously see and reason, embryology textbooks show, sonic, you know, ultrasound shows, the baby's a baby.
Yeah. I mean, what I've noticed too, especially because, again, I'm on a college campus, I literally speak to lefties like hours a week.
God bless you.
I know it is quite a thing. But it's why I also know all the arguments they make, because, like, when you're looking at the dehumanization, what the justifications that were used for slavery, that it's not a human, and then how far they went with it, so far as to depict, like in your book as well, to depict Black people as monkeys, to start using really racially driven tones. It's the same thing when you talk about a fetus. They'll go out of their way to try to say it's not a human, but when you ask, okay, if it's not human, what is it? Is it a rock? Is it a dog? Is a tree going to sprout out of her vagina?
Yeah.
Like what if it's not human? At what point does the transformation happen where all of a sudden it goes from being an inanimate object into being a human?
When it passes through the magical vaginal canal, Kevin.
Yeah, weird. I don't know how many rocks
People
I
actually
know
think that though.
I don't know how many rocks I can think of that have heartbeats and hands and feet.
And you're right. You can't really give a definition to what is it without describing some segment of actual functioning adult human beings.
Right.
Yeah. It relies upon people not wanting. It relies upon, because at the undergirding all of this in our modern day society is, why do people want abortion to be legal? And it comes down to the abdication of responsibility and accountability. Guys not my age, but guys college age want abortion to be legal because they want to know for sure that when they're sleeping around, hey, even if she gets pregnant, she don't have to worry about it. And the women want it to be legal because, they're so driven. We've created our society has so not emasculated, but like they're pushing such masculine traits on women, such as having a career, devoting yourself to your career, focusing only on yourself, which is not everybody takes that to an extreme nowadays. But women nowadays are more like,
attribute it to cultural things. I'm just gonna say it. Women are horny. Just like
you got to understand, like a lot of women nowadays, they're sleeping around because they're not looking for their husband. They're not looking for a family. They're looking to, they want to have fun. They want to enjoy themselves. They want to go out and enjoy the world and build their career and everything like that. Stuff typically that was more reserved for men before abortion was really legalized and birth control really became popular. So in today's society, because of the reasons why a lot of people end up wanting abortion to be legal, if you're not, undergirding that, they want these arguments to work. So they don't want to ask any more questions. They don't want to ask the follow-on question of, if it's not, if it's a part, like if it's not human life, then what is it? If it's not, when does life begin kind of deal? It's like when that sperm hits the egg and they fertilize and attach kind of deal. It's like, you tell me all the time, 97% of climatologists say that global warming is man-made. Well, how about this? 98% of biologists, of whom were polled, about 50,000 were polled in this survey. 98% of biologists say that life begins at conception. Oh, by the way, well over 90% of them identified as liberal left. They were very much on the pro-choice side, but even they acknowledged, hey, I'm pro-choice, but I know where life begins. And that's, at least they can understand the difficulty of the question being asked.
I can attest to the fact that is indeed how most college dudes are thinking.
Yeah, I thought that way when I was that age.
I absolutely thought that way when I was 21 in college. I mean, you don't care. You don't want to think about it any further.
I don't want to. Kids are the worst STD you can catch, man. Like, if you don't have someone with you, it's going to destroy your life. At least that's what I was thinking back then.
That's what you're thinking back then, exactly.
Not that I'm thinking that now. Bucky's like, what? It's like, look, you can take some pills and get rid of the chlamydia and the gonorrhea and the syphilis, but there wasn't really a pill to get rid of that 18-year life suck. I'm just kidding. I love children. I love children. I just want to get that out of there.
This is just the thought process. This is seriously the thought process of most young dudes.
Yeah,
I will. Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it. That's it.
So, with that undergirding the arguments, they want to believe them, is what it comes down to. So, like I said, the elephant's going in one direction and the rider's making no attempt to stop it, because you know what? Might as well keep on going.
Right.
Chapter 2, invoke compassion and sympathy.
Ooh.
Suggest evil is best for the victim. Olivia, what do you mean by that?
So that kind of goes back to what Cole said. Hey, it's better that we don't bring these children into the world. They'll be unloved. They'll be abused. They won't have families. All these terrible things I don't want happening. I don't think any pro-lifer, any person who's anti-abortion, they're not hoping, man, I really just want to force that woman to pop that baby out so that baby can be sexually abused. No, like that to me is kind of the strangest thing I ever hear. Like you don't care about the child, you don't care about any of these other issues. No, but this kind of goes back to what I told you, Bucky. People are all called to all different things. I am very, anti-child abuse. My daily life is not fighting that fight, even though it is extremely important. It's right up there with the abortion fight. I just, that's why God equips people with all different, passions and gifts. Because that's obviously a fight that needs to be fought. The foster care system, pro-family, like pro-dads in the home, all these, things that are under attack. But yeah, it was the arguments used for slavery were that, well, hey, they're in tribal Africa, they're in this savage state. Let's bring them here. Well, it's better for them, like, hey, the compassion, don't you feel bad for them that they don't have access? They're living in this like savage state of nature. Here they'll be exposed to the Christian faith. They'll be clothed. They'll be fed. All these, like, it's good for them to be enslaved. No, it's not. And it's the same thing, with the babies. It's better that they're killed early. No, it's not. Murdering innocent people, it's not a good thing. It doesn't lead to good things.
But my neighbor has Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Why can't I just go over there and?
Yeah. It is really sad. I know that in some countries in Europe, they kill 100% of the Down syndrome babies. And I don't know how much interaction you have with your neighbor. But the Down syndrome people I know, like, they're just such a joy. Yes, of course, they're different than me.
He's also pretty poor.
He's pretty poor?
No, he's using a hypothetical
I think at one
here.
time he was abused as well.
Yeah, no,
yeah. Because he deserves life,
Yeah.
It's like, and yeah, I don't know.
It's so disgusting because I have never met someone with Down syndrome that was not an absolute joy to be around.
Oh my gosh, they're such a gift.
Would you want your child would you want a child with Down syndrome? It's like, no, the question you're asking there is, am I willing to sacrifice what I need to sacrifice for them? And it's like, no, I don't want to make that sacrifice. I'd rather try again later. It's like the amount of eugenics that come out of it. It's pretty terrifying, because at the same time, you can make that argument for a whole host of things. Well, what if we're able to identify the gay gene, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, your child is going to be gay. Guess I'm going to try again later, kind of deal. It's like, how far are you willing to take that argument that it's just better for them, right? Being poor, it's just, they're going to be poor, well, so are a lot of people, right? And I guarantee you, being poor in this country is better than being poor in about 97% of other countries. So actually 100%, but the Luxembourg, those kind of places are also pretty nice to be poor in. But
yeah, again, who decides? Who is the person who should
it's
be
a slippery slope,
whether or not somebody's quality of life justifies murdering another human being?
I volunteer as arbiter. No one.
No, I don't want you as arbiter.
No one.
I would just say no one gets the right
to. I do.
I'd be waiting for and the thing is that if you had an arbiter, the actual cases where it's necessary would present themselves, like such as your child does not have a fully formed skull, like the child is going to be dead upon arrival, kind of deal. And that's one of the arguments. I love it when the leftists make that. They go to, what about rape, incest, and life of the mother? I go, you know what? I'll grant you those three. What about the other 98%? And it comes back to the semantics game: abortions of convenience versus abortions of necessity. We can eliminate 97% of them and then argue about the rest at that point. But it's the semantic game, and their appeals to emotion and their appeals to compassion and sympathy. It's like, okay, well, now you're describing what I call inconveniences, and those, you don't get to kill someone for being inconvenient.
Yeah, see, I'm no abortion, no circumstances. And I think, Tim Tebow's mom, she was told he's not going to live, kill him. And she said, nope, I'm a Christian, I'm keeping my baby. And it was Tim Tebow. Yeah. So I think the danger in that, obviously, is doctors get it wrong. And
they do.
Yeah. So, and I think that so many times, and those things to me, so what? So the baby doesn't live, but that's a natural death. It's a tragedy. You don't dismember the child because they might die later. The doctors might get it right and the baby might die. I don't get that argument, when they make it. So
the method of removal itself is brutal, but at a point, it's like, if you know for a fact there is no heartbeat, the brain itself isn't there, which there are diseases that do that. At that point, it would probably be best for everyone to surgically remove what is a dead human. At that point, it's still a human, but humans can be dead at any point in life.
Oh, if the baby's dead,
But-
yeah, of course.
but it's
if the baby
like-
died in the mother, yeah.
But that itself, that specific circumstance is like 0.1%. So it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
at that point, it's like, that's what I said. The ones where it's necessary will present themselves. And I think people would be really shocked to realize, wait a second, that eliminates just about 99% of abortions, like right off the bat.
Right.
But
That's that pinning down water. You catch them on abortion's wrong. Oh, well, what about rape? And now I'm no abortion in rape. I don't think that's right. I know it's not right. And what I do is, like, I show people 2 ultrasounds of the baby and says, hey, one's conceived in rape. Who should die? Pick which little face gets to get cut up because their dad, did something wrong, something very evil. So to me, no, in rape, no, I don't, that's just me.
My stance on it personally is that I personally wouldn't do it, but if choice is the thing in my life, consent is the most important thing. Everything I do is based off the idea of consent, and therefore, at that point, if the act itself was non-consensual, and I cannot blame her personally. Like, I can understand logically why she would do it. I would hope she wouldn't, and I would urge her not to. And I would try to get her not to, but I think that in that case, it's a different level of morality between, an abortion caused by rape versus an abortion caused by just sleeping with the wrong guy.
Right.
For me in that situation, it comes down to how would I view the person doing it, and I would say, I think you made the wrong decision, but I understand why you did it more than anything. It's really difficult, but that's a really hard one to kind of like
a hard one to be
different.
ideologically consistent on, because if we're just talking about ideological consistency and only worrying about the life instead of the circumstances of said life, when we designated a life, then you're going to end up swinging from one polarity to another, and in one circumstance or another, you might look bad, right? And I think ideological consistency demands of us that very cringe-worthy positions sometimes, and that's why so many people don't have it. And Olivia, I commend you on that stance, and I think a lot of people wouldn't, but it is something that's when you look at it from the perspective of it's life, and that's why we don't do it, and because that is my epistemology, I'm going to ride it all the way through. It makes it a lot easier to argue, right?
It does. I get heat, but it is consistent.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing. Like I said, for a lot of people's stance, whether it's political, whether it's moral, whether it's religious, is maintaining ideological consistency, because at some point down the road, you're going to have to look at yourself and go, damn, I have to agree with this thing that really sucks and that I'd rather not, but going to do it anyway, right? And that's tough. This is where logic even comes in for me, where I'm like, oh, sometimes logic just sucks, even itself. So I don't know. It's tough to find a middle ground, but at least looking through everything that in the way you have is a respectable way to go about it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Chapter 3, a petition to reason and logic, necessary for survival. Olivia, explain yourself.
Okay, we only got 2 more chapters, everyone. So we're almost done. So in the slavery argument, they argued that if abolition occurred, if you got rid of slavery, the whole economic system's going to crumbling down. I mean, there's just going to be so much more damage from abolition than just maintaining the institution. And that's the same thing with, obviously, abortion. They, yes, it's not ideal, but without it, there's going to be so many more problems. Again, the overflooded foster care systems, and just the abuse and all these bad things. I know that's kind of an overlapping argument with chapter 2, but if that was what they say now, is if you get rid of abortion, there's going to be so much more fallout, which I disagree with.
Mm-hmm. they'll make appeals to consequences such as, a lot of people who would be aborted end up growing to be criminals or druggies or all these other things. And it's like, excuse me, so you think we should just kill people because they might be a criminal at some point in their life? Anybody might be a criminal at some point in their life. Granted, 90% don't have a father, but there you go. That's the issue we need to be discussing. Why don't they have a father? But they'll say, like, once abortion was legalized, crime rates went down, homicide, all this other stuff. I'm like, how truly evil are you? That's such a disgusting argument to make. We were killing a lot of, we killed a lot, right? 64 million since 1973, but probably about 1 million of them would have been criminals, which is actually higher than the standard rate of criminality. It's like, you look at it on the whole, 64 million. How many of those, by just percentages, would have ended up being criminals, and how many of them being criminals justifies killing the rest, right? If it's only 10%, I don't think 10% potentially being criminals justifies killing the other, millions. If it's, up to 63,999,999, well, I still don't think it's right to take that person's life, that last person's life.
I just want to say one simple trick to end crime for all time.
Mandatory abortions?
No more
Abort
law.
everyone.
Yeah, there you go. Let's have an abortion of the earth.
There would be no more
Okay,
crime.
Bucky cannot be the arbiter.
Bucky, you are not allowed.
No more
you are not allowed.
For environmental green energy.
Yeah, we need to save the earth. What really shows itself through in the pro-choice stance is Nietzsche's Nietzsche's God is dead argument, right? The idea that as soon as you remove God from the equation, people stop thinking that there's anything worth living for in life. And when people don't think that there's anything actually worth striving for in life, they end up focusing on hedonistic pleasures and stuff like this. They end up being more concerned about doing stuff in the world that's fun and happy and joyful to make up for the lack of spirituality they have. And so I think that a lot of this argument, a lot of the atheist argument is just made from a position of they have lost the guidance as far as what comes after. And because they don't think anything comes after, they don't think that there's really much value in life. They don't understand when you don't have that idea in your head that, hey, we are unique and special as humans here. When you think, that we're just humans, that's all that matters. We are no more valuable than any other form of life. No, as far as we know, we are the only thing in the entire universe of so many galaxies that you would never be able to count them. If you were counting at 100 numbers a second for the rest of your life, you would never be able to count the amount of galaxies that are here. And as far as we know, we are the only thing that gives any of it meaning. We humans are the only reason this universe means anything. And to deny the significance of that when you look at life on the whole is like, no wonder you think it's okay to just murder children.
Wait a minute, Kevin. If we're the only things that give people meaning, doesn't that kind of remove God from the equation? Because even if we're not here, but God exists, then doesn't the universe have meaning because it was created by him?
What is a universe created by God where no one's there to appreciate it? Like, I think the fact that we're here,
who roams around outside my neighborhood doesn't appreciate it.
The fact that we're here shows that God himself was like, hey, someone needs to appreciate this work, because the dinosaurs weren't able to do it. It took a long time for us to be able to, which, by the way, I think it's more impressive that we have evolved out of the universe that God created, rather than, we were just planted here on a whim. But it's like the atheist argument just takes so much of the meaning from everything, because once you drive things down to just logic and reasoning, you're basically treating humans like computers. At which point it's like, here's the series of inputs. Should you keep the child? No. That's all that matters. So,
well, it does take away meaning completely. And, nihilism, I've been down the nihilism hole, and I can tell you, it certainly leads to hedonism. It gets to a point where you're just like, screw it, man. I'm just going to have fun. And that's it. And that is truly it. And it's good for about a few weeks. And then you're like, well, this is depressing. Well, this is really depressing.
Okay. So one argument that people of dissenting opinion to what we believe will leverage as a petition to reason and logic is that we should have abortions because otherwise we're going to have to contend with overpopulation.
Mm-hmm.
population's going down no matter what in every industrialized country, and the only reason that population stays stable in the US is because of immigration. Every other industrialized nation, China's population is probably going to fall by 500 million people within 45 years.
The birth rate,
Why is that,
by the
Cole?
way.
Well,
Tell people why.
So
Because Bucky's and Cole's ain't over there getting girls pregnant.
Started with the one-child policy, and actually they would go around and give forced abortions to people in certain villages back when this policy was. And what was the fallout of that? 500 million.
Yeah, it's just destructive.
And the fallout it's climactic. It's dramatic. It's drastic, and there's nothing they can do. Nothing.
Right.
Except open the doors to wide open immigration, which they're not going to do. I promise you they're not going to do that.
They have, 50 million more men than women right now? And most of their population is old.
Wasn't it like one woman for every 20 men?
It's one eligible.
Not quite there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a phenomenon of shadow girls who were never just registered with a Chinese ID card. Who came to be 18 and they were like, I'm here.
But aren't they mostly rural?
Don't post-abort me, state, please. Right. But it's still, even then, it's like, yes, there are about 30 to 50 million more dudes. So, you have this surplus population of dudes who are angry that they're never going to be able to find a wife, right? And I've even seen that, having a Chinese wife over there where they're like, you took away one of our chicks, man. We don't like that. They're not happy about it, right? So
yes, we did.
That's
creates a
we
lot
are
of
ending white supremacy.
Jordan Peterson actually talks. Jordan Peterson talks about the importance of women, a woman partner tempering the aggression of her man. Like, that is a thing that women do for men. They temper the aggression of men. It is incredibly important, the role women play in the interaction.
Not just the aggression, the recklessness in general.
Yeah,
I mean, my life really did not come together until I got married and had a child.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
For this guy.
Men that don't have that female partner in their life end up really resenting life and acting out and doing terrible, horrible things to people because it's important. And I was going to ask you a question, Olivia, and completely slipped my mind.
Before we get too far, I want to make one more point. Another aspect of the fallout from the one-child policy isn't just economic or population issues. It has given rise to a massive market for human trafficking, particularly women out of North Korea. There is a massive sex slavery and human trafficking market in China because there's so many more men than women. When I was driving around with my wife, one of the things that really surprised me and spoke loudly to me about Chinese culture is that she would lock the doors of the car as we were driving around town in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I'm like, I don't even lock my doors at night. What are you doing locking the door while we're driving through Main Street? And she told me that, well, it's habit, because in China, in many places, you legitimately have to worry about getting boxed in traffic and gangsters on mopeds shooting up alongside your vehicle, opening your back door, ripping your little girl out of the car and zipping through traffic, and there's no way you can catch them, and they will be sold to a man in the countryside, and the government does not care. They don't do anything to stop it.
That's really sick.
And so the one-child policy hasn't just produced economic problems for China, a housing bubble for China, and a population issue. It's actually fostered a culture of not caring about the sanctity of women, and propping up a market of sex slavery.
Right.
Speaking of I remember the question I wanted to ask. So you mentioned earlier, you kind of just mentioned it as an aside or just as a quick part of what you were saying, but it's actually probably one of the most significant points that you've made. When you look at our culture today, and you see the amount of praise that is thrown upon single mothers and the amount of hate that is given to single men, or the fathers that didn't stick around to take care of their children. How big of an impact, and what do you think the problems with that idea are?
Yeah, so I actually I had a gal, one of my friends. She's running for state senate here in Tucson. I mean, we're redistricting right now, but she's in my neighborhood, my area, and she brought this to my attention a while ago, and she was saying if the mother is allowed to unilaterally make that decision to kill the baby, then the man should be allowed to unilaterally get off the hook for child support. And I'm like, yeah, exactly, you know, and how ludicrous is that? Because that's his responsibility.
Mhm.
Like, you know, so I think it, now, of course, I want fathers to be there. I want fathers and mothers to like have responsible sex and make families. I just, you know, like we kind of taking it back to the China issue, apart from all these little babies who have suffered terrible deaths, like remove that, but just kind of from like a very unemotional perspective, this economic bubble, this, you know, propping up sex slavery, all these different things on top. I mean, just like but you can see the destruction that has come. And me being a believer, it's like you know, good things come from good fruit, you know, seeds. And you know, bad seeds come, you know, bad fruit comes from bad seeds, good fruit comes from good seeds. You know, you don't grow roses from you know, a thorn or whatever, you know, bramble bush. But I think that it just goes to show that this reaps such destruction, whether you agree with it or not. It's such a ripple effect across a culture. And I know they were having issues in the Chinese army, the Chinese military, like maybe our one saving grace because of the one child policy. They've killed all these little girls. They've kept these little boys, and they have been the only child, the pride and joy of these parents, these spoiled little brats.
Emperors.
Yeah, and now they're forced into military service, and they're like, whoa, hold on. Usually everyone does something for me. I don't have any allegiance to communist China. Hold on, I'm just a little spoiled baby brat. And so it's creating a lot of problems in the Chinese military of all these men who have been, you know, little, like you said, little emperor syndrome, whichever one you said that. But I think that even for people who maybe don't agree with it on, you know, or like get as distraught about the emotional side as I do, just you can see the destruction that it wreaks across everywhere. It's just such a destructive thing. It's like the same thing, you know, comparing it to slavery. We are still dealing with the fallout of something that happened how long ago? 170 years ago now? 150 years ago? And no one now, no Black Americans have been in chains like Black Americans in the 1860s, 1850s, since the 1620s when they first rolled up into America. And we're still dealing with this, like these horrible race relations, you know, reparations, affirmative action, all this fallout to try and prop up people who don't need to be propped up, you know, because they're not disadvantaged. They're bright Americans. They can work. So I think it's just, it shows you just how destructive it is. And it's like, I don't, on top of the emotional side, but just the very like kind of mathematical side, I don't want, who wants to deal with the sin, the fallout that's going to happen from abortion down the road? I don't.
No, it's going to be tremendous because, again, it's just in America, it's like 63, 64 million people, most of which were Black. Like the half of the Black population that's conceived every year is aborted, I'm pretty sure.
I know.
And
It's, yes.
The point I was kind of getting at, though, is like one of the things we do in our society now is through our praising of the single mother. We live in a society where men propose and women dispose. The only way a man can have sex is if a woman says yes. Like men are all trying,
Right.
basically all men are trying to have sex, right? It's why when people ask like, why is it that women can't sleep with a bunch of men? It's because, well, when men sleep with a bunch of women, most men are going to get rejected all the time. So a man that doesn't get rejected, that's actually a sign of that man technically being like higher up on the hierarchy, if you will. But if all a woman really has to do to have sex on any given night is go into a bar and just start asking
Right.
dudes if you want to have sex with her, and
Right.
someone will say yes, and that's men propose, women dispose. We have completely removed the accountability of women in their choices of sexual partners because it's like we don't want to acknowledge the fact that, hey, you know, women are actually in the most control here when it comes to sex. And if you're a single mother, chances are it's because you made a terrible decision. You don't get to kill the father or the child because you suck at picking fathers kind of deal. You know, it's
Right.
we've removed that accountability as basically everything on the left seeks to do. It's all about denying your consequences of your actions. You know, you had sex with someone you shouldn't have. Well, here's an abortion. You went and got a degree you shouldn't have. Well, here, we'll take care of your finance. We'll take care of your student loan debt. You have people saying, hey, I was bad with my credit card. Can you take care of some of that debt? You have people, everything is about removing the consequences of your actions, because everyone knows it sucks to deal with that. It really sucks when your bad actions all of a sudden rear their ugly faces. But you know, it's how much of a role do you think the abdication of accountability of women's accountability in their sexual behavior has really impacted the view of abortion?
Yeah, 100%. I think you can, you know, were women happier before they were sexually liberated, or are they happier now? Clearly, based off of like the psycho-mental issues, everyone has anxiety, everyone has depression, every female, and actually this kind of like occurred to me probably about a year ago. I was like, you know what? Men are kind of on the right track. Women they're flipping nuts. Why is that? Maybe because so many of them had abortions. I'll agree with you. Maybe because so many have had abortions and it is so traumatizing. It causes such emotional damage and psychological trauma to the women. Like women are victims as well. Now they consent to it. They consent to doing these things, which, you know, abortion. I know it's not okay. But it causes such damage, and it's like, okay, you can look at the state of, you know, women. Were they happier then, married, home with their families, or are they happier now? They were happier then. You know, like women were much happier. It was a better deal, apparently. I'm not saying all, but overall, generally, as a rule, they were happier then, before they were sexually liberated, than they are now.
Freaking feminists ruin everything.
I know.
Jesus. I had a friend who told me, she goes, I hate feminists because I just want to stay at home and be a mom, and they're telling me now I have to go out and have a career and shit. This is crap.
Yeah, it's called like the trad wives club, or, you know, traditional wives club. You just want to go back to being barefoot, making their husband a sandwich.
Tell you what, it sucks dating in college now, because it used to be women went to college to find a husband. They were hoping in one of those classes. That's how my parents met. But now it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I've got to wait till you're like 27, 28 before you're going to be. Nope, come on now. Nope, none of that crap.
Or you could do really like me and Cole did.
Go to another country? Yeah, no.
Wait, Bucky, where's your wife from?
From China.
Okay, whoa.
Everything is made in China. Oh, is Jason trying to tell you to get out? He's trying to tell you to get out, isn't he?
He's just saying what's up. I think he's out of here.
You think he's done, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Jason.
Hello.
You can come say hi.
Is Jason pro-life?
I haven't taken care of.
Yeah.
Very
Jason.
This is the station manager.
What is the moon made out of? What is the moon made out of, Jason?
Plasma energy.
Yeah.
Plasma
all about
energy.
it.
What shape is the Earth, Jason?
It's a flat disc.
There we go.
It's proven. It's proven. If you do the
proven.
All the research.
You need to talk.
What's your opinion on feminism?
I don't know. That's up to females.
Yeah, he thinks the moon is plasma, but won't say that feminists suck. Jesus, Jason, where's your logic?
I'm just not a woman.
Just kidding.
I don't know how women think. I'm a guy.
You know what? That's a good point. I think that's what I need to
I've
accept.
heard Jason say.
Don't tell me as a man what to think if you're a woman.
I mean, I identify now as a woman, Jason. I'm telling you to stop thinking what you think.
Well, good luck.
You have a good rest of your night, but I know you're probably like dead at the office at this point.
Yeah, what am I? I'm about 14 hours in. I'm all right though. It feels good. I'm going home and enjoy the rest of my weekend.
Well, I'll see you on Wednesday then, of course.
Yeah. Hey, we've been doing good, man. It's been a good morning show. So, all right, see you guys.
Bye. Guys, I'm actually going to use this opportunity to extricate myself as well.
That's
we're going to get out of here real soon.
We got to go enjoy Golden Week.
We're going to hit one last chapter, and then we're all going to say goodbye. How's that sound?
That sounds
okay.
Great.
One more chapter. We can do
one
that.
more.
All right. Portraying abortion as a losing battle. Can you or can you not legislate morality? Olivia?
We can, because we do.
We
You're
shouldn't.
not legally allowed to rape. Well, obviously in America, well, it depends who you are. I guess there's a two-tier justice system. You shouldn't. Okay, you're not supposed. You're not supposed to be able to rape. Now, Harvey Weinstein, I guess you can. Bill Clinton, I guess you can. Cuomo, guess you can. For the normal person, you're not allowed to rape. You're not allowed to just murder people. I mean, there's tons of times you're not allowed to do things. You do legislate morality. Now, people still do it, but they do it way less. So that's my argument is they were saying that people would still keep slaves anyways. And that may be true. And they say that people will still get abortions. Yes, that's true, but not nearly as many.
Yeah. I mean, legislating morality has always been it's always a tall task, especially when you're talking about the state, because as soon as you're talking about morality, you have to question, where is the morality coming from?
Right.
So,
right.
Because of the inherently subjective nature of morality,
Right.
giving that kind of power to legislate morality to a government becomes dangerous, and uniquely dangerous based on what we've seen over the last 100 years. Giving a government that kind of ability is it's opening yourselves up to genocides usually. And so I'm personally, as an anarchist, I don't think the government's in the business of legislating anarchy. I think that the communities or legislating morality. Communities are in the business of legislating morality. Communities are the ones that set the standard. And when you have a strong community that's built on a foundation of individuals striving to be the best versions of themselves to help the people around them, kind of deal. Those are the kinds of communities where the morality itself legislates itself, because you don't have to make rape against the law for me to see someone being raped and know to kill the person doing it. You don't have to legislate murder being illegal for me to see someone trying to kill another person innocently for me to say, okay, time to pull the trigger. And that's what laws come down to. Are you willing to pull the trigger if you catch someone doing it? And so only things you would personally be willing to pull the trigger to stop are things that should be made legal or illegal. And at the end of the day, in order to stop that abortion, I mean, you could kill the doctor technically, obviously, but the question comes down to, if the woman herself is going to do it, are you willing to kill her to stop the abortion? And so that's where I come back to the community aspect of things. Foster the community. It's one of the problems I've actually had with mainline Christianity, is that a lot of the reasons girls use for why they get abortions comes down to really terrible communities, as in she will be ostracized, she will be abandoned, her friends, her relatives will stop speaking to her. Those kinds of things are the symbols of a broken community, because even no matter what religion you profess, your community should never be one where a girl thinks her option is it is better for her to kill a child than it is to bring it up in this community. Because if you cannot fix that, whether the legality of abortion does not matter, because you are still creating the environment that would make a girl think that's a necessity, at which point they're still going to occur.
Right. Yeah, I think that just specifically talking about the U.S., it's like, okay, we have this, our supreme documents, the Constitution. Okay, that its predecessor, Articles of Confederation, but the Declaration. So the Declaration lists, hey, we're leaving you, Great Britain. We're independent. A government is supposed to secure, everyone has an unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And therefore, we're setting up a new government to protect those things. And so I think just, kind of also back to the logically then, you may be an anarchist, but that's not where we live right now. We live in a country that should be governed by the Constitution. And what is the Constitution set up? It's setting up a government, a limited government, to protect those three things for everybody. Doesn't matter how big they are, where they live, if it's a womb, if they live in Tucson, if they live in Colorado, Fort Collins, I guess China. Good luck. But yeah, so I think that that they're just kind of objectively, yes, I agree with you about morality. It is subjective. It shouldn't be, but people think it is. Me, it's objectively the Bible is where I get my morality. But objectively, the government set up is to protect those things listed, enumerated in the Declaration. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair. The protection of life trumps all, and I absolutely agree with it. But it's still, there is still the aspect of, on an individual level, what is the individual motivator for a particular girl or that's seeking this out. And so what can you do to eliminate the possible, what can you do to stop her from thinking, well, it's a poor community and I'm going to be, there's no way to support it. The community here doesn't have any food or anything to be able to help me have this child. Well, that's a sign that the community is responsible. If that's her decision, the community is responsible. If she says to herself, I'm getting this baby because if I don't, I'm going to be kicked out of my church. I'm going to lose the support of my church. My parents are going to, abandon me and I'm going to have nowhere to stay. That's
Absolutely.
on the community. And so
You're right.
And so what it comes down to is that most of the reasons girls use are symptoms of really broken communities. And so a lot of the stuff we talk about is actually symptoms of broken communities. You want to talk about single fatherhood, that's a symptom of, or single motherhood, that's a symptom of broken communities. You want to talk about the welfare state, that's a symptom of broken communities, right? And so it's a lot of it is we have to, if you can't, abortion is more of a symptom of the disease than the disease itself at the end of the day, because the disease itself is a society that has lost its value of life, and we need to build that back up again. Because if you can get that, if your communities can reinvigorate themselves to the idea that all life is sacred when it comes to humans, you don't need to make abortion illegal.
Right. You're right.
And so, that's kind of like my outlook on it is, what can we do to make abortion unnecessary? Because
that sounds very similar to the thing I said in the very beginning about it being a downstream issue.
Yes, I agree with you.
It's simultaneously not a downstream issue though, because again, there's actual lives on the line every time an abortion occurs. That's a life lost, right? Not every time that somebody receives a welfare check is a life lost. Not every time that somebody gets, fails out of school is a life lost. But every time there's an abortion, there is a life lost.
So let's get some conclusions.
Yeah, abortion's wrong.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to speak about it more. It's uncomfortable. And I take a lot of heat here when I go to all my, Republican events, because I'm actually, on a side note, there's a woman running as a Republican. I get pretty involved in politics too. She's running as a Republican. She's a proud former abortion doctor. So I've been hunting her down at every event and telling people about her, and I've been taking heat. But you know what? There's been some pretty miraculous changes from people who were very pro-abortion to now being pro-life. So I think a huge part is changing the culture. I hear what Kevin says, and this is my complaint. I'm a Christian.
Yep.
And going to church, I couldn't get people to get involved to help others. And I'm like, it was the most bizarre thing, because I was not raised Christian, and becoming a Christian, Rob Ryder. Okay. Becoming a Christian, I was like, hey, we got this burden to help others. Like, we're here to serve others and to spread the gospel and these things. And they just wanted to sit on Facebook, watch their cooking shows, whatever. I don't know. And so there's a failure in communities, and I will absolutely own it is in the Christian community too. People are freaking lazy. They're not living up to what they're called to do. So I would just encourage Christians, get off your freaking butts, get working, and just stand for life. I would just encourage people to be very principled and stand for life.
If people are interested in finding your book, where do they go?
They can email me. Actually, oh gosh. Okay. Maybe you can put my email somewhere here, because of course I had to switch my website and now it's all down and crashed and whatever. So they can't go to the website, but they can email me at lucusa2019@gmail.com, or they can get it on Amazon. I just kind of, I ship tons.
I see you.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Kindle,
Kindle, there you go. Okay.
So guys, jump on. It's very easy. I'm going to pick it up. Honestly, I've been reading a lot more on Kindle.
Bucky's currently putting it in the comments.
Oh,
yeah,
thank you. Okay.
I thought you were.
Oh, I thought you were. I saw you reached over, so
I don't even know where this is streaming, so
it's going to YouTube and Facebook.
After. Oh,
that's
okay.
a good deal, guys. $1.50 for this. I mean, Olivia, she's great. She's ideologically consistent, like I said. She cares about community. So we're going to put her book in the comments, and please, support us, support her. Pick up a copy.
Yeah. It's been absolutely wonderful having you on here. I have to also mention that I too am a very, very proud Christian. And like you said, I think that there needs to be a lot done, especially in the Christian community. I think that we have a failure of strong men in this society, an intentional destruction of strong men in this society to lead communities. Hence why communities are breaking. And so, yeah, it disappoints me to hear how hard it is to find help in a Christian community. But I think that the Christian community right now is just a reflection of our society as a whole, wherein people are just being encouraged to go about their lives as they are and just do extra little things every once in a while. So those of you who are watching now or will watch later, just remember, if you consider yourself to be a Christian at the very least, you are called upon by God to go and act. You don't have to go out and say Jesus to everyone. As long as your actions themselves reflect that you are a follower of Jesus, everyone will know. That's what it comes down to. The words don't matter anymore. It's the actions we need to rely on. So,
right. Amen.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be putting a link in the comment section and in the description to Olivia's book. And Olivia, I can say I'm very excited for your next book to come out, The Federal Reserve versus Slavery, the parallels between two things that are exactly the same.
All right. I don't know when that's coming out. Hey, maybe end the Fed book. Yeah, I hate the Fed.
Fuck the Fed. Excuse my French.
Yep. Forgive him,
All right,
guys.
guys. Hey, everybody, have a wonderful night. Thanks so much for joining.
See you guys.
Night,
Thanks,
guys.
Olivia.